The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Pine Street as Officer Jane Reeves drummed her fingers on the steering wheel of her patrol car. She had been having a bad day, and her mood was getting worse by the hour. 2 false alarms and a noise complaint that turned out to be nothing but kids playing basketball. It felt like a waste of her time. Through her windshield, she noticed a young black boy walking down the sidewalk. He couldn't have been more than 12 or 13, wearing a blue school backpack and carrying what looked like some kind of electronic device. Officer Reeves straightened in her seat, her eyes narrowing as she watched him pass by. The boy Marcus Thompson was actually heading home from his school's robotics club. In his hands, he carefully carried his latest project, a complex maze-solving robot that had just won first place in the district science fair. The silver and blue machine, built from scratch over 3 months of careful work, was his pride and joy. "Hey! You there! Stop right where you are!" Officer Reeves's sharp voice cut through the quiet afternoon air. She had already stepped out of her patrol car, one hand resting on her hip near her holster. Marcus froze mid-step, his heart suddenly pounding in his chest. He turned slowly, confused but trying to stay calm like his parents had taught him. "Yes, officer? Where did you get that device?" Officer Reeves approached him, her boots clicking against the pavement. Her eyes were fixed on the robot in his hands. "I made it, officer. It's my science project. I just won first place at Don't Lie to Me," she cut him off, taking another step closer. "That looks like expensive equipment. Where did you really get it from?" Marcus's hands started trembling, but he held his robot carefully. "I'm not lying, ma'am. I have my school ID and my robotics club card. The competition was today at Washington Middle School. You can call my teacher." Mr. Roberts put that device on the ground. Slowly. Officer Reeves's voice had gotten harder, colder. "But it's mine. Look, I have all the documentation right here in my backpack." Marcus tried to reach for his bag. "Hands where I can see them." Officer Reeves barked, pulling out her handcuffs. "You're making this worse for yourself, kid." Tears started forming in Marcus's eyes, but he stayed still, remembering everything his parents had told him about these situations. "Please, officer, I didn't do anything wrong. This is my project. I built it myself." "Turn around and put your hands behind your back," Officer Reeves commanded, ignoring his protests. "You're under arrest for suspected theft and resisting an officer." "But now!" With shaking hands, Marcus carefully set his robot down on the sidewalk. As he turned around, he could see neighbors peeking through their windows, but no one came out to help. Officer Reeves roughly grabbed his wrists, the handcuffs clicking shut with a cold finality. What Officer Reeves didn't notice was the subtle blue light that began pulsing from Marcus's robot the moment the handcuffs touched his skin. She was too busy reciting the Miranda rights and calling for backup to notice how the robot's display panel flickered with strange symbols that definitely weren't part of its original programming. As she led Marcus to her patrol car, either of them saw the brief shimmer in the sky above like heat waves on a summer day, but much higher up. And they certainly didn't notice the sudden activation of dozens of invisible sensors that had been dormant in the area for years, all now focused on this one spot, this one moment. Officer Reeves opened the back door of her patrol car, still lecturing about how punks like you needed to learn respect for the law. She had no idea that in exactly 7 minutes, everything she thought she knew about authority, power, and the universe itself would be turned completely upside down. Marcus sat quietly in the back seat, his head bowed. But if Officer Reeves had looked more closely in her rearview mirror, she might have noticed something odd about the tears rolling. Down his cheeks they seemed to catch the light in ways that normal tears didn't, almost as if they were glowing from within. Officer Reeves sat in the driver's seat, filling out her preliminary report while waiting for backup to arrive. She glanced at her watch. Only 3 minutes had passed since the arrest, but something felt off. The air in the car seemed heavier, almost electric. In the back seat, Marcus remained silent, but his robot sitting in the front passenger seat had started making unusual sounds. At first, it was just a quiet hum, barely noticeable above the idle engine. Then the hum grew deeper, resonating at a frequency that made the windows vibrate ever so slightly. "What's that thing doing?" Officer Reeves snapped, looking at the robot with growing suspicion. Its display panel was now cycling through strange patterns she'd never seen before, definitely not something a middle school student could program. The robot's blue light began pulsing faster, synchronized with a soft beeping that seemed to be counting down. Officer Reeves reached for it, intending to shut it off, but pulled her hand back quickly when the metal felt unnaturally warm. "Turn it off, kid," she ordered, turning to face Marcus. Her words caught in her throat when she saw him. The boy's usual brown eyes had a faint silvery sheen to them now, reflecting light that didn't seem to come from any source in the car. "I can't turn it off, Officer Reeves," Marcus replied calmly, using her name even though she'd never told it to him. "The authentication protocol has already begun." "The what?" Officer Reeves reached for her radio, but it produced only static. Her body cam light had gone dark, and when she checked her phone, the screen showed no signal. Above them, the afternoon sky rippled like disturbed water. A few passers-by stopped to stare upward, pointing at the strange phenomenon. The shimmer lasted only seconds before the sky returned to normal, but anyone watching carefully might have noticed that the clouds now moved just a little too smoothly, as if they were being projected on a massive screen. Inside the patrol car, the robot's casing began to transform. The simple silver and blue science fair project shifted and flowed like liquid metal, restructuring itself into something far more sophisticated. What remained looked less like a student's maze-solving robot and more like an advanced piece of technology that would make NASA's engineers green with envy. "Observation Post-Earth, Authentication Code Gamma 719, Marcus spoke clearly, his voice carrying a subtle harmonic undertone that hadn't been there before. "Priority alert, local authority interference with diplomatic mission. Requesting immediate response." Officer Reeves's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she watched her dash cam dissolve into a fine metallic dust. The dust particles hung in the air, forming a three-dimensional grid throughout the car's interior. Each point of light in the grid captured and recorded everything from multiple angles. "What? What are you?" she managed to ask, her voice barely a whisper. "I am Diplomatic Observer Marcus, 3rd level," he answered. The handcuffs around his wrists had started to corrode at an impossible rate, flaking away like autumn leaves. "I was assigned to study Earth's technological progress, specifically in the field of robotics and artificial intelligence. My cover as a middle school student allowed me to observe without interfering." A deep thrumming sound filled the air around them. Officer Reeves looked out her window to see 3 tall, shadowy figures materializing beside her car. They seemed to step out of thin air itself, their forms solidifying with each passing second. Her patrol car's computer screen flickered to life on its own, but instead of showing the usual police interface, it displayed a stream of unfamiliar symbols. A mechanical voice spoke through the speakers, authentication confirmed. Diplomatic status verified. Initiating containment protocols. Officer Reeves reached for her door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The windows had taken on a strange, mirror-like quality, completely hiding the interior of the car from outside observers. She realized with growing dread that she was no longer in control of the situation if she ever had been at all. For minutes until full materialization, Marcus announced calmly from the back seat, now sitting perfectly straight, his posture almost unnaturally perfect. "Officer Reeves, I suggest you prepare yourself. My superiors will have questions about your actions today, and they are far less forgiving than I am." High above Earth's atmosphere, hidden behind advanced cloaking technology, the observation ship's stellar watch burst into activity. Red warning lights flashed through its corridors as the emergency signal from Marcus reached the command center. Captain Thomas Reed, the human name chosen by the ship's commander, stood before a massive holographic display showing Earth below. A bright dot pulsed at Marcus's location, and streams of data flowed across multiple screens around him. Status report, he commanded, his human disguise flickering slightly with concern. Young observer Marcus activated emergency protocols 6 minutes ago, First Officer Wilson reported, her fingers dancing over the control panels. Local law enforcement detained him. His cover identity has been compromised. Captain Reed's expression darkened. Marcus is our youngest and most promising observer. His success rate in gathering data about Earth's technological progress has been remarkable. Show me the incident. The holographic display shifted, replaying the encounter with Officer Reeves from multiple angles. The captain watched in silence as the scene unfolded, his face growing more concerned with each passing moment. This is exactly why we chose children observers, he said finally. Their natural curiosity and ability to blend in with Earth's educational systems made them perfect for monitoring technological development. We never expected one of them to face such prejudice. Down on Earth, the three tall figures had fully materialized around Officer Reeves's patrol car. They wore what appeared to be simple business suits, but the fabric seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. Each of them carried what looked like ordinary tablets, but the technology within them could have powered a small city. Extraction team in position, Wilson announced. Awaiting your orders, Captain. Reed studied the scene carefully. This incident may have forced our hand, but perhaps it's for the best. Earth's technological progress has been impressive, but their social development. He gestured at the replay of Officer Reeves's actions. This shows we still have concerns. The ship's AI interface, which the crew called Joy, spoke up. Captain, I've analyzed all of Marcus's gathered data. In the past year, he has documented 2,347 instances of technological innovation in his assigned region alone. However, he has also recorded 1,892 instances of social conflict based on superficial differences. That ratio is troubling, Wilson noted. The Galactic Council's requirements for first contact clearly state that social harmony must match technological progress. Reed nodded slowly. Perhaps this incident can serve a greater purpose. Joy, initiate first contact protocol Beta 7. Beta 7? Wilson's eyes widened. But sir, that's the educational protocol. We usually reserve that for situations where we need to teach, not punish, Reed finished. Marcus has shown remarkable insight in his reports. He specifically chose to appear as a member of Earth's most historically oppressed groups to gather data on social progress. Let's trust his judgment. Back on Earth, Marcus sat calmly in the patrol car as the extraction team approached. Through the mirrored windows, Officer Reeves watched in growing panic as they drew closer, their movements too smooth and coordinated to be human. The team leader, appearing as a tall woman in a charcoal suit, raised her tablet. The patrol car's electronics responded instantly, all systems shutting down as more advanced technology took control. Young observer Marcus, the team leader, spoke, her voice carrying that same harmonic undertone as Marcus's. The captain has authorized Protocol Beta 7. Do you accept the responsibility? Marcus straightened even more, his eyes now clearly glowing silver. I accept. Officer Reeves has shown us exactly what Earth needs to learn before joining the galactic community. The tablet in the team leader's hands projected a sphere of soft blue light around the entire car. Inside, Officer Reeves felt a strange sensation, as if reality itself was being gently rewritten around her. Beginning educational sequence, the team leader announced. Officer Reeves, you are about to receive a lesson that no human was supposed to learn for another 50 years. Please pay attention. The future of your species may depend on how well you understand what we're about to show you. Officer Reeves pressed herself back against her seat as the blue light filled her patrol car. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as she watched the impossible unfold before her eyes. The air itself seemed to thicken, making each breath feel like inhaling warm honey. Your first lesson, Marcus spoke from the back seat, his voice now carrying an authority that no 12-year-old should possess, begins with understanding what you're actually seeing. The handcuffs that had bound Marcus's wrists completely dissolved, turning into a fine silver mist that danced in the air. But that wasn't what made Officer Reeves gasp. It was Marcus himself. His appearance was changing. The illusion of a young black boy began to fade like morning dew under sunlight. His skin took on an iridescent quality, shifting colors like the surface of a soap bubble. His eyes, now completely silver, seemed to hold depths that went on forever. He grew slightly taller, his school uniform morphing into what looked like a flowing garment made of living metal. "What you're witnessing," one of the figures outside the car spoke, their voice somehow crystal clear despite the closed windows, "is the dissolution of a quantum camouflage field. We call it the veil of perception." Officer Reeves tried to speak, but her mouth felt dry. She watched as Marcus's science project continued its transformation, expanding and restructuring itself. The simple maze-solving robot was now clearly revealed as something far more advanced, a compact data collection device covered in softly glowing symbols. "Your cameras didn't malfunction," Marcus explained, gesturing to her dead body cam and the dissolved dash cam. "They simply couldn't process what they were seeing. Your human technology isn't advanced enough yet to record our true forms." Outside the car, the three figures had also dropped their human appearances. Their business suits flowed like liquid metal, revealing forms that seemed to bend light itself. They weren't exactly tall anymore, they simply existed in more dimensions than Officer Reeves could properly perceive. Officer Reeves finally found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "I don't understand. Why? Why were you pretending to be a young black student?" Marcus finished her question. "It wasn't random. We chose this appearance specifically. Your society's treatment of different racial groups provides valuable data about your species' readiness for galactic integration." The blue light pulsing through the car started forming images in the air, floating holograms showing scenes from Marcus's time on Earth. There he was winning science competitions, facing subtle discrimination from judges. Walking home from school, being followed by suspicious store owners. Raising his hand in class, being overlooked despite having the right answers. Each of these incidents was recorded, Marcus continued, his silver eyes reflecting the floating images. Each interaction, each microaggression, each moment of prejudice. And each act of kindness, too. We've been measuring humanity's progress not by your technological achievements, but by how you treat those you perceive as different. Officer Reeves felt a cold weight settle in her stomach as she watched the recordings. She saw herself through alien eyes, not as an authority figure maintaining order, but as someone whose prejudices had just jeopardized humanity's standing in the galactic community. "The Galactic Council," one of the beings outside spoke, their form rippling like heat waves, "has strict requirements for new member species. Advanced technology is only part of the equation. Social development, elimination of baseless prejudices, and the ability to embrace genuine diversity are equally important." Marcus leaned forward, his transformed appearance now fully stabilized. He was still recognizably humanoid, but clearly, gloriously alien. "Officer Reeves, you're about to become part of a pivotal moment in human history. The question is, will you be remembered as the obstacle that delayed Earth's advancement, or as someone who learned and helped your species grow?" The blue light intensified, and Officer Reeves felt reality shift around her. The inside of her patrol car seemed to expand impossibly, becoming a space that could hold the truths she was about to learn. The interior of the patrol car had transformed into something that defied human architecture. The seats remained, but the space around them had expanded into what looked like a circular chamber with walls of shifting light. Officer Reeves found herself unable to move from her seat, held in place by invisible forces. "Let me show you something, Officer Reeves," Marcus said, his iridescent form now hovering slightly above his former seat. He raised one hand, and the walls of light erupted with images, thousands of them, all playing at once. These are recordings from my daily observations, he explained. The images focused one by one. Here's what I saw in your city's schools. Officer Reeves watched scenes unfold, gifted students being overlooked because of their race, brilliant minds dimming under the weight of prejudice, young dreams being crushed by systemic barriers. But there were other scenes too, teachers fighting against these injustices, students standing up for each other, small victories in the battle against discrimination. We've been watching Earth for centuries, one of the beings outside said, their voice resonating through the chamber. Monitoring your progress, your wars, your achievements, your failures. We've seen humanity split the atom, reach for the stars, create incredible works of art. And we've also watched you divide yourselves over the most superficial differences. Marcus's transformed data collection device, what had appeared to be a simple robot, floated between them, projecting more images. This device doesn't just solve mazes, Officer Reeves. It maps the maze of human social interactions. Every prejudiced comment, every unfair assumption, every moment of discrimination, and every instance of someone choosing to be better. Officer Reeves found herself forced to watch scene after scene. She saw herself in many of them, small moments she'd forgotten or ignored. Times when she'd acted on bias rather than evidence, when she'd let prejudice guide her actions. Your own record is interesting, Marcus said, his silver eyes studying her reactions. The device projected a detailed analysis of her career, every stop, every arrest, every report. The patterns were undeniable, displayed in cold, hard data. I was just doing my job, she whispered, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Were you? One of the other beings asked. Their forms shifted, briefly taking the shape of every person Officer Reeves had wrongly accused over the years. Was it your job to assume guilt based on appearance? To enforce laws differently depending on the color of someone's skin? Marcus floated closer, his iridescent skin rippling with colors that seemed to reflect Officer Reeves's own turbulent emotions. In my time here, I've learned that humans have an extraordinary capacity for both cruelty and kindness. You can hold on to prejudices that make no logical sense, yet also show remarkable ability to grow and change when confronted with truth. The chamber filled with new images, scenes from other worlds, other civilizations. Species that looked nothing like humans working together, living in harmony despite vast differences. Cities that sparkled with advanced technology while preserving nature. Societies that had moved past prejudice to embrace true equality. This is what Earth could be, Marcus said softly. This is what humanity could achieve if you could move past the artificial barriers you've created among yourselves. Officer Reeves felt tears running down her face as she watched these visions of possibility. The weight of her actions, not just today but throughout her career, pressed down on her consciousness. The Galactic Council believes in redemption, Marcus continued, his form glowing brighter. They believe that individuals, an entire species, can learn and grow. That's why I was sent here, not just to observe, but to identify those moments when change becomes possible. The chamber's lights pulsed, and Officer Reeves felt the invisible force holding her relax slightly. Marcus moved to face her directly, his silver eyes meeting hers. Officer Reeves, he said, his voice carrying both authority and compassion, you now have a choice to make. One that will affect not just your future, but potentially the future of your entire species. The expanded space within the patrol car hummed with energy as new figures began to materialize. Unlike Marcus and the extraction team, these beings made no attempt to appear human. They emerged as pillars of light that slowly took shape into forms that seemed to fold through impossible dimensions. The council representatives have arrived, Marcus announced, his iridescent form bowing slightly. The data collection device floated to the center of the chamber and projected a massive holographic display. Officer Reeves watched in awe as 12 beings materialized around her, their forms varying from crystalline structures to waves of pure energy. They arranged themselves in a circle, and she realized with a start that she was about to face judgment from creatures far beyond her understanding. The first council member spoke, their voice somehow translating directly into her mind. We have reviewed the incident through young observer Marcus's recordings. Officer Jane Reeves, do you understand why you are here? She swallowed hard, her voice shaking. Because I arrested him wrongfully? No, a second council member responded, their forms shifting like aurora borealis. You are here because your actions today represent a critical failure point in human social development. We need to determine if this failure is systemic, or if there is hope for change. The holographic display began showing scenes from Earth's history, moments of great progress alongside moments of terrible prejudice. Wars fought over differences in appearance, scientific achievements made by those who had to overcome discrimination, social movements that pushed humanity forward, and the forces that tried to hold them back. Your species stands at a crossroads, a third council member explained, their crystalline form refracting light in mesmerizing patterns. Your technology advances rapidly, but your social progress lags behind. This creates a dangerous imbalance. Marcus stepped forward, his silver eyes glowing brightly. Council members, if I may speak? After receiving their acknowledgement, he continued, in my time observing Earth, I've learned that humans often need to face their prejudices directly before they can overcome them. Officer Reeves's actions today, while troubling, provide an opportunity. The data collection device spun faster, projecting Officer Reeves's entire career in three-dimensional detail. Every interaction, every decision, every moment of bias was laid bare for the council to examine. Tell us, Officer Reeves, one of the council members said, their voice resonating with authority, if you could review every arrest you've made. Every person you've stopped, every assumption you've acted on, would you be proud of what we would find? The weight of truth pressed down on her, as she watched her own actions played back in perfect detail. She saw patterns she had denied, biases she had justified, harm she had caused while telling herself she was doing her job. No, she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. No, I wouldn't be proud. The council members shifted, their forms rippling with what might have been approval. Acknowledgement of error is the first step toward correction, one of them stated. Marcus floated closer to Officer Reeves. The council needs to decide not just your fate, but how this incident will affect Earth's evaluation. Your planet has been under consideration for first contact, but episodes like this raise serious concerns. However, another council member added, their energy form pulsing with each word, we also recognize the potential for growth. Young observer Marcus has documented numerous instances of humans overcoming their prejudices when confronted with truth. The chamber filled with a soft, golden light as the council members communicated among themselves in ways Officer Reeves couldn't understand. After what felt like both seconds and eternities, they reached a decision. Officer Jane Reeves, the first council member, spoke again, we offer you a choice. But know that this choice carries the weight of more than just your own future. Your decision today will influence how we proceed with your entire species. The air around her crackled with possibility as she waited to hear her options, understanding that whatever came next would change everything not just for her, but potentially for all of humanity. The council's golden light faded, leaving the chamber bathed in a gentler blue glow. Marcus moved to the center of the space, his iridescent form now radiating a calm authority that made Officer Reeves forget he had ever appeared as a young boy. Your choices are these, he began, his silver eyes meeting hers. First option, we can erase your memory of this encounter. You will return to your duties with no recollection of what happened today. However, this means Earth's evaluation for galactic contact will be delayed by at least 50 years. Officer Reeves felt her heart sink at the thought of humanity losing such an opportunity because of her actions. Before she could speak, Marcus continued. Second option, you retain your memory of everything you've learned today, but accept a special assignment. You will become what we call a bridge, a human aware of our presence who works to prepare Earth for eventual contact. The data collection device projected images of other bridges throughout history, people who had secretly guided human progress, who had worked behind the scenes to push society toward greater understanding and acceptance. Being a bridge isn't easy, one of the council members added, their crystalline forms shifting. You would need to confront your own prejudices first, then work to help others confront theirs. You would see the truth about humanity's place in the universe, but couldn't share it openly. Not yet. Marcus raised his hand, and the chamber filled with new visions. Officer Reeves saw herself in possible futures teaching at the police academy about bias and justice, working with community organizations, making real changes in the system she had been part of. But why me? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. After what I did. What I'd been doing all these years. Why would you trust me? Marcus's form rippled with what might have been something like a smile. Because those who have faced their own darkness often become the strongest advocates for light. Your understanding of the problem makes you valuable in solving it. The extraction team, still positioned around the chamber, began to glow more brightly. One of them spoke, "Show her, young observer. Show her what made you choose to appear as you did." Marcus nodded and touched the data collection device. Suddenly, Officer Reeves felt herself experiencing memories that weren't her own. She was Marcus, walking through human society in the form of a young black boy. She felt the weight of suspicious glances, the sting of unfair assumptions, the frustration of having to work twice as hard to be taken half as seriously. But she also felt hope. She experienced moments of genuine human kindness, witnessed people standing up against injustice, saw communities coming together across racial lines to support each other. Through Marcus's eyes, she saw humanity's potential alongside its flaws. We chose this appearance, Marcus explained as the shared memories faded, because it would show us humanity's truest face. Those who treat everyone with respect even when they think no one important is watching. They show us what humans can become. The chamber's light pulsed gently as Marcus continued, "Your reaction to seeing me as a young black student told us everything we needed to know about your prejudices. But your reaction now, to understanding the truth, tells us everything we need to know about your potential for change." Officer Reeves felt tears rolling down her face again, but these were different from her earlier tears of fear. These were tears of understanding, of regret, and most importantly of hope. "The choice must be yours," Marcus said softly, floating closer to her. "But know that this moment right here, right now could be the beginning of something extraordinary. Not just for you, but for your entire species." The chamber fell silent as Officer Reeves looked around at the assembled beings, the council members, the extraction team, and Marcus himself. She knew her next words would shape not just her future, but potentially the future of human-alien relations. The weight of the decision pressed down on her, even as a growing sense of purpose began to fill her heart. Officer Reeves took a deep breath, straightened in her seat, and made her decision. "I want to remember," she said, her voice stronger than it had been since this all began. "I want to be a bridge. I need to make things right." The chamber filled with a warm light as the council members acknowledged her choice. Marcus's iridescent form glowed with approval, and the data collection device pulsed with new energy. "Be aware," one council member warned, their crystalline structure catching the light, "that this path will not be easy. You will see things differently now. Every prejudiced comment, every unfair action, you will notice them all, and you will have to work to change them without revealing why." "I understand," Officer Reeves nodded. "But I've spent too long being part of the problem. It's time I became part of the solution." Marcus moved forward, his silver eyes bright with purpose. "Then let us begin the integration process. You will retain your position as a police officer, but you will also receive certain enhancements." The extraction team moved in closer, their forms creating a circle around Officer Reeves. The air shimmered as they began the procedure. She felt a strange tingling sensation as new knowledge and understanding flowed into her mind. "You will now be able to see patterns of behavior more clearly," Marcus explained as the process continued. "You'll recognize opportunities for positive change. You'll know when to speak up and when to guide quietly from the background. Images flashed through Officer Reeves's mind: training sessions she would lead, conversations she would have, moments where her influence could make a real difference. She saw herself helping to reshape police training, working with community leaders, and slowly but surely helping to build bridges between law enforcement and the communities they served. Remember, another council member spoke, their energy form pulsing. You cannot tell anyone about us directly, but you can help prepare humanity for the day when we can reveal ourselves openly. The data collection device floated to Officer Reeves and transformed one final time, becoming a simple silver pendant. This will allow you to communicate with us if needed, Marcus explained. It will also record your progress. As the integration process completed, Officer Reeves felt different, not physically, but in her understanding of the world. The weight of her new responsibility settled on her shoulders, but it felt right, like she was finally doing what she was meant to do. There's one more thing, Marcus said, his form beginning to shift back into the appearance of a young boy. Tomorrow, you'll respond to a call at Washington Middle School. A young black student will have created an impressive science project. What you do there will be your first test. Officer Reeves smiled, understanding dawning in her eyes. I think I know exactly what to do. The chamber began to shrink, reality folding back into the normal dimensions of her patrol car. The council members faded away, the extraction team disappeared, and Marcus returned fully to his human disguise. Officer Reeves, he said, now looking again like the 12-year-old boy she had wrongly arrested, you've taken the first step on a long journey. Remember what you learned today. Remember what you felt. And most importantly, remember that change starts with one person choosing to be better. As the last traces of alien technology faded, Officer Reeves found herself sitting in her normal patrol car, everything looking exactly as it had before, except now she wore a silver pendant, and her perspective had changed forever. Marcus stepped out of the car, his science project tucked under his arm, looking once again like any other middle school student. But just before he turned to leave, his eyes flashed silver one last time. See you tomorrow, Officer Reeves, he said with a knowing smile. I believe you have some reports to rewrite, and some changes to start making. She watched him walk away, touching the pendant around her neck, and knew that while her shift might be ending, her real work, her most important work, was just beginning.